Question: news editors decide what to broadcast on television and what to print in newspapers. What factors do you think influence these decisions? Do we become used to bad news? Would it be better if more good news was reported? Use your own ideas, knowledge, and experience, and support your arguments with examples and relevant evidence. You should write at least 250 words. Model answer 1. Newspapers and TV channels often consider good news not so good for their business because it does not sell well. A radio station that relies on broadcasting positive news soon finds itself out of business for the lack of listeners. News editors' decisions on the type of content to broadcast seem motivated by business goals or political biases rather than social and professional responsibilities. In this era of bad and fake news, most people are immune to bad news, and it would definitely be better if more good news was reported. Though newspapers and TV stations report global events accurately, be they natural or human disasters, it is also true that their main objective is to sell newspapers and bring in more listeners and viewers to their stations and favor a particular political ideology. For that, they often use confusing news headlines and reports that have little or no value to society and are full of negativity. Since more viewers and readers are attracted to reading bad news or have political preferences, newspapers and other media often reflect the flavor of their stations by providing news and broadcasting tailor-made events to suit their listeners' and viewers' preferences. Since we like to read negative news or events that have spices on them, both readers, viewers, and editors have to change the way they consume or create content. The professional obligations of journalists and editors, as well as our mentality as viewers and readers, could be remarkably altered if more good and positive news, reports without political biases, and true global events without fabricating them are reported. In conclusion, editors need to stick to their professionalism while readers and viewers need to be more aware to make media reports more useful and reflective of our society. Model answer 2. In today's modern world, a growing amount of news and information on television or in newspapers has considerably influenced the public. Besides, what factors are impacted by reporting information on news media is an issue many people feel strongly about. This essay will discuss various influences as well as the phenomenon associated with it above. As far as I am concerned, there is a wide range of factors accounting for publishing news and broadcasts. The most noticeable, I believe, that aiming at a high audience rating so as to maximize profits. This leads to pursuing the increasingly diverse needs of viewers from all walks of life in order to satisfy and cater to them. Another contributory factor is that for many countries, news editors have to succumb to political pressure, distorting facts and misleading the public. To put it another way, they are controlled entirely by powerful political parties and enjoined to disregard the truth. This is particularly true in many undemocratic countries like China, North Korea, and Vietnam, where information is seriously censored and even disseminated political ideals to guide public opinions. Moreover, living in the information era, people are bombarded with the daily amount of news, including good and bad news, from multiple media. Today's coverage and press might sometimes be less trustworthy, mainly because it often exaggerates the level of the real information in order to boost the attention of the desired audiences. Furthermore, some media companies use the stories of people's private lives, seductive images, and violent or obscene content to appeal to viewers, especially teenagers. It means that their thoughts and behaviors might be changed and shows a tendency to hatred, violence, jealousy, and even copycat phenomenon. However, the role of the news media in reporting good news, such as someone's achievement and human stories, should be acknowledged. That will make quicker progress toward society being better. In conclusion, what today's news and information on the media we receive is influenced by some main factors, such as hooking viewers, increasing profits, and obeying political regulations. Besides, the news media can have a double-edged impact on society with the good and bad news. By doing so, we can ensure that choosing information carefully before reading and watching is indispensable to us. Model answer 3. It has often been said that good news is bad news because it does not sell newspapers. A radio station that once decided to present only good news soon found that it had gone out of business for lack of listeners. Bad news, on the other hand, is so common that in order to cope with it, we often simply ignore it. We have become immune to bad news, and the newspapers and radio stations are aware of this. While newspapers and TV stations may aim to report world events accurately, be they natural or human disasters, political events, or the horrors of war, it is also true that their main objective is to sell newspapers and attract listeners and viewers to their stations. For this reason, TV and radio stations attempt to reflect the flavor of their station by providing news broadcasts tailor-made to suit their listeners' preferences. Programs specializing in pop music or TV soap operas focus more on local news, home issues, and up-to-date traffic reports. The more serious stations and newspapers like to provide so-called objective news reports with the editorial comment aimed at analyzing the situation. If it is true, then, that newspapers and TV stations are tailoring their news to their readers' and viewers' requirements, how can they possibly be reporting real-world events in an honest and objective light? Many radio and TV stations do, in fact, report items of good news, but they no longer call this news. They refer to these as human interest stories and package them in the program specializing, for instance, in consumer affairs or local issues. Good news now comes to us in the form of documentaries about the fight against children's cancer or AIDS or the latest developments in the fight to save the planet from environmental pollution. Alternative answer 4. News, both in print media and on television, should reflect the authentic, unbiased, and important news for the audiences, and that news plays an important role in terms of educating people, informing people about the current world, and giving them an insight into political and social views. But sadly this is not always the case, and news editors are often broadcasting and publishing biased and politically influenced news that does more harm than good to society. There are various reasons for that. First of all, the personal views and political biases are two important factors that cause this problem. Newspapers and TV news should ideally be two great media to reach the people with the real and authentic news. People greatly rely on these media to get updates on events and current affairs, and the impartial and biased news misleads them often. Often political views of editors and their link to a particular political party lead to this problem. It is not uncommon that a chief editor gets appointed to the position by the powerful political party, and he is expected to present news in favor of this party. Second, in many countries, the government imposes strict rules on what type of news can be presented to the public, and that also causes problems in terms of fair and accurate news presenting. In many cases, money and corruption are involved in such heinous acts. Again, many newspapers heavily rely on other renowned newspapers and the internet for current news, and if the source is corrupted, that leads to the case of printing and broadcasting impartial and misleading news. The personal threat, political reasons, power, greed, pressure, personal gains, and business are the main reasons editors sometimes decide what to broadcast and what to print. I would not agree with the notion that we are used to the bad news, as I have witnessed many cases when good news gets more attention and audience than bad news. It's true that the bad news is, by its nature, appealing to people, but as a whole, we want to know about the true happening. Good or bad, people want to learn the truth. Often people's attention can be achieved by publishing and broadcasting bad and negative news, but this is not always the truth, as events like a peace treaty, World Up, noble contributions, achievements, good deeds, and the political positive decision get more readers and viewers than bad news. In conclusion, we are not used to the bad news, and editors do decide which news to be reached to the public or not based on their personal, business, and political reasons. Model answer 5. At the present time, editors decide what kind of news should be shown on television and what kind of news should be printed in newspapers and magazines. It doesn't matter for them what sort of news, bad or good, their sole wish is to make sensation even from bad news. Therefore, there is a lot of bad news that became popular, and they have an impact on people. Maybe we have to announce only good news and hide bad ones. If we look at today's world, news sources like newspapers, magazines, television news, etc., play a very important role in our society. These sources give us information about the world. Firstly, it's noticeable that you can see all types of information on TV or in newspapers, beginning with the opening of new car factories and culminating with disasters. But you can't decide what kind of news you want to read in your morning routine, it is decided by the news editors. They will choose which news to publish. Secondly, editors need your attention so they publish the most interesting news, like the death of Osama bin Laden or the flood in Japan. Thus, people became familiar with that kind of news. In addition, news has a big influence on people. One bad news story can affect thousands of people, and the same if it would be a good one. To sum up, although some people believe that only good news should be shown or published, in my view, everybody has to know what's going on in the world and must feel the reality of life. Model answer 6. It is true that the decision of the news editor is the final judgment of the news report, which is broadcast to our media like television and newspapers. This is certainly true that there are a number of factors that always affect the adoption of these decisions. However, it can be argued that good news may bring peace and happiness to a nation. There are several factors that act as a precursor to the news editor that influence them to take decisions about what to broadcast or print in their media. Firstly, perhaps most news editors want to increase the selling of their newspapers in order to rapidly raise their profit. Secondly, popularity and true news are other significant factors that influence the news editors to make a decision. Finally, some news editors of developing countries are affected by the political governments to make a decision about their news report. Recently, we see that many newspapers and television channels are publishing bad news. For example, many media outlets, NTV and BTV in particular in Bangladesh, are always broadcasting about the lifestyle of celebrities, which is neither informative nor important. Moreover, this type of news spoils the life of an adult person. If the media provides good news, such as educational, scientific, and so on, these can motivate the younger to achieve more knowledge. This could result in the immense advantage of a nation. In conclusion, while news editors are inspired by the several factors to make a decision about a news report, it can be argued that good news is more indispensable than bad news. Therefore, news editors should broadcast and print such types of news, which can bring many benefits to the human being. Model answer 8. This is the newscaster's duty, whether to broadcast or print any particular news. There are various factors behind these decisions. Although people are seriously disturbed by watching the bad news, I believe that there should be a balance between bad and good news. There are a number of factors from which news editors seem to be influenced prior to deciding the type of information to be placed as news. Firstly, news corporations are much more obsessed with popularity, competency, and profitability amongst their news agency counterparts. Because, before they are able to earn a stupendous amount of money, they would have to be competitive in the news market. This is the reason why they sometimes tend to show the most drastic, exaggerated, and spicy news in order to attract more audiences. Secondly, there are a huge variety of elite industries that are willing to sponsor news agencies. In this way, news editors may have to present the biased and impartial information solely to promote the attractive reputation of these high-profile industries. Finally, some news firms are perhaps politically, religiously, or culturally prejudiced just to make extravagant money. It is undeniable that bad news does not have any negative impact on people's lives. Most of the time people are being bombarded with the vulnerable news. This has led to a greater level of depression, anxiety, phobia, and uncertainty in many people. Also, I tend to believe that news publishers should not be thinking too short-sightedly. Rather, they should put a greater emphasis on broadcasting the truth and reality as well as maintaining the balance between devastating news and good news. It would be a lot more productive for the nations if they were informed of good news such as improvements in health or scientific matters or any new invention on top of getting the truth about critical global or local matters equally. In conclusion, people cannot become immune to the bad news. While there are some crucial factors involved in making news, I would argue that news editors should maintain the balance between both types of news before presenting it to the nation.